A very good morning, children. Hope you all understood the previous class. That is what monera we talked about, we discussed about. So we have learned the characteristics of monera, and also we have seen a lot of examples of monera. Okay. So now what we are going to do is, now we are going to the second kingdom, which is called as Protista. Now what we are going to see is the characters of Protista. Okay, on what basis the Protista is classified as a separate kingdom, why those organisms were chosen to be under the kingdom called as Protista. That is what we are going to clarify. Okay, now coming to the first point, these organisms are unicellular, right? That is already what we have learned, isn't it? So these organisms are unicellular. In monera also we have seen that the organisms are unicellular, right? But here, apart from being unicellular, only very few of them are multicellular. Now what makes the major difference between, you might think that now these are unicellular and also the organisms in monera are also, the monerans are also unicellular, right? But the major difference comes here is these are eukaryotes. These are all eukaryotes. Already I have said that what are eukaryotes? If there is a cell, there are organelles which are bound with the membrane. If there is a nucleus, there is a nuclear membrane, and there is mitochondria which is bounded by a double membranous structure. Then there is endoplasmic reticulum, okay, which is present all over the cell. Okay, so not only that, you can also see the chloroplast. Okay, the chloroplast is also the membrane bounded structure. So these kind of structures are basically present in the eukaryotes. So that's why eukaryotes are completely separated and kept in the group called as Protista. Whereas these kind of structures, you will not find them in the monerans. Is it clear, children? So, and second thing here is the aquatic habitat. That means most of these organisms, they live in the aquatic habitat. What is aquatic habitat? Water, right? They usually live in the water. So their basic habitat is water, right? That's why we are calling it as aquatic habitat. So most of the organisms which belong to Protista are usually aquatic organisms, right? Now coming to the third one, that is nutrition, the mode of nutrition. So the organisms which are in the group, especially Protista we are talking about, some of them are photosynthetic in nature. What is photosynthetic in nature? They can perform the photosynthesis, right? They are eukaryotes, they are unicellular eukaryotes, and also can perform the photosynthesis process. Okay, that's why they are in the group called as Protista. In the monerans, we have seen that they are prokaryotes, unicellular, also they are photosynthetic. So this character is different from this character, because here you are seeing that all these organisms are eukaryotes. So these are eukaryotes, and also they can prepare their own food material, right? So that's why they are called as photosynthetic organisms, or they undergo the autotrophic nutrition, right, or photosynthetic nutrition. Then some of them are saprophytes. Some of them are saprophytic, and also they are saprophytic nutrition, right? They absorb the digested food material. They depend upon the dead and decaying matter. So they are the saprophytes, which directly, let me explain in this way. So if there is any food material, they cannot directly eat it, so that's why they will release some enzymes. Okay, they will digest the food material, and then the plant will be able to absorb through its body surface. So those organisms are called as the saprophytes. So, and also holozoid, taking the food as a whole into the body, is called as the holozoic nutrition. So these three different kinds of nutrition you can find in the organisms which belong to the kingdom called as Protista. Okay, now here we have to learn two new words, right? One is phytoplankton, second one is zooplankton, right? The whole protista, all the organism protista, you can divide them into phytoplanktons and zooplanktons, right? When you come to the phytoplanktons here, see what happens is here there are some organisms which undergo photosynthesis process. They can perform the photosynthesis, and also they have a cell wall. And also there are plastids in it. What are plastids? Leucoplasts, chromoplasts, and chloroplasts, right? So if there are chloroplasts, that means they are able to prepare their own food material, right? So that's why if they are photosynthetic, plus if they have cell wall, and also if they contain plastids in the cell, then they are called as the phytoplanktons. And now if they are not able to perform photosynthesis process, if they don't have the cell wall, if they don't have the plastids, then they are called as the zooplanktons. Okay, they comes under the zooplankton. So that is how you can divide them into phytoplanktons and zooplanktons. So basically the organisms which belong to this to the protista, they live a solitary life, and also they live as colonies. That means they can live an individual life, isolated, right? Nowadays we have the right word, quarantine, isolated, right? Deserted. So they can live a single, solitary in the sense single, right? So they can live single life, right? They can live individually. Sometimes they also live in the colonies. So that's why, the kind of way they live is they can be a solitary life, or else they can live in the colonies, right? So already we have discussed that they have the membrane bounded organelles. That's why they are in the group called as the eukaryotes, right? And the kind of respiration it takes is the anaerobic respiration. That means taking in oxygen and giving out the carbon dioxide. So anaerobic respiration, right? Then these organisms can undergo sexual reproduction and also asexual reproduction. So they can undergo sexual reproduction, and also they can undergo asexual reproduction. So that means they can they can split into two. Basically their mode of reproduction is splitting into two. That is binary fission. So their mode of reproduction is binary fission, but there are some organisms which can reproduce sexually. So in the last I told the example of the paramecium, right? So you can take the example of the paramecium, which undergo process called as conjugation, which is a sexual reproduction. So here you can see number of examples of protista, right? The organism which belong to the protista. You can see here amoeba, you can see the paramecium, you can see the chlamydomonas, you can see the euglena, okay, you can see the slime molds, okay, you can see the diatoms which live in the water. So diatoms live in the water in such a way, whatever you see, you see them like a green pastures. That's why the diatoms are called as the green pastures of the sea, green grasslands of the sea. So that is how all these organisms will come under the protista. Okay, so this is how the characteristics of protista ends, right? So if you have any doubts regarding all these things and all, you can simply text me up, and then I will get back to you in the next session. Let me end this with one example, right? So you might have known about the euglena, right? So euglena belongs to the kingdom Protista. Okay, so this euglena, when there is presence of light, when light is available to it, it performs a photosynthesis process. Euglena, if light is present there, if there is sunlight, okay, if there is availability of sunlight, it will undergo a process called as photosynthesis. But whereas at the same time, when there is no availability of light, okay, it becomes heterotroph. That means it depends upon the other organisms for the nutrients. Okay, children. So basically, now we can come to a conclusion that these organisms they depend upon the sunlight, because there are some phytoplankton, that means plants, okay, they which belong to the plant like structures. Okay, so these phytoplanktons, they depend upon the sun and perform photosynthesis process and prepare their own food material. Okay, and now there are some organisms which depends upon the nutrients present in the water, and that is how they get the nutrients. And there are some organisms which depends upon the other organisms for their food material. For example, if you see the amoeba depends upon the paramecium. Okay, amoeba eats paramecium. Amoeba has the pseudopodia, which are false legs and all. No, like they will capture the paramecium and they can digest the paramecium outside the body and then take it into its body. So that is how they make the food vacuole, and also you might have seen in the 8th class. So this kind of things and all you can find in the Protista, right? These are all the characteristic features of the Protista. I hope you all understood this, children, right? So if you have any doubt, text me. Right, now we'll go to the next topic, that is the fungi. Okay, children, till now we have learned about the characteristics of the second kingdom, Protista, right? Now coming to the third kingdom, which is fungi, right? Some people call it as fungi, some people call it as fungi, right? So fungi is also not a big deal. So it can also be pronounced as fungi. Right, so now this fungi, they look like plants, but they are not plants, right? That is reason why they could not be placed in the kingdom called as plantae. They look like plants, right, which are visible, which are not micro, which are visible. They mostly look like plants, but they are not kept under the plantae, kingdom called as plantae, because they don't have the characteristic features of the plantae kingdom or characteristics of the plant. They don't match together. That's why they don't even match their characters with the Protista or monera, nor they will match the characters with the plantae. That's why they are kept under a separate group, which is called as the fungi. Okay, so now coming to the fungi. Fungi are basically multicellular. Basically, you can see here they are multicellular in nature, and except one particular fungi, which is the yeast. Yeast is the only fungi which is absolutely unicellular, right? All the other fungi which are present in the kingdom, which is called as fungi, all of them are multicellular. Okay, and also the second thing here is they are eukaryotic in nature. Already we know what is eukaryote, membrane bounded organelles, right? All the organelles have the membrane bound to them. So that's why these are under the next category, that is they are also eukaryotes. And now here all maximum of them are the multicellular. Okay, so only one yeast is unicellular, right? And now the next point is that these are non-motile in nature. We have seen that the amoeba moves with the help of pseudopodia, paramecium moves with the help of cilia, bacteria moves with the help of flagella, right? So each and every organism has their own kind of movement, right? Okay, so they are able to move with the help of some structures in their body. But whereas here, when you come to this fungi, these are completely non-motile. They cannot move from one place to the other. So they should be strict to one particular substratum, right? They should be stick to one particular place. Now coming to the next very important feature, why they look like plants but they are not placed in the plants. What is the reason behind that? The reason behind that is they don't have the pigment molecules. Especially we are talking about the chlorophyll. So basically the organisms in fungi are non-motile. They cannot move from one place to the other place, right? That's a point we have already learned. And the next point is that they don't have any pigment molecules in them. Especially we are talking about the chlorophyll. So this chlorophyll is absolutely absent in fungi. right? If there is chlorophyll, they can prepare their own food material. But whereas here, as the fungi doesn't have chlorophyll in them, they cannot prepare their own food material. And what's the next option? They have to depend upon the other organisms. If they are producing their food, then they will come under the autotrophs. If they are not able to prepare their food, they come under the heterotrophs. So now these are heterotrophs, and their mode of taking in food is completely different. Now, as we have already learned that word called as saprophytes, right? Now these basically, if you see the fungi, you see them growing on the dead logs, the trees which are about to die, or bread which is spoiled, right? So whatever the decaying things are there, whatever the dead and decaying things are there, this fungi basically grows over there. You might have also seen them growing on the trunk of the trees. Okay, so they usually grow there. And now how do they survive, right? If they don't have the chlorophyll, if they are not able to prepare their food material, then how do they survive? Now they have this saprophytic mode of nutrition. They behave as saprophytes. That is, now if this is some food material, okay, now what happens is these fungi will grow here. Now they have a head and also a thread-like structures like this. So these thread-like structures are usually called as the hyphae. They are called as the hyphae, and they have a head also, which is called as the sporangium. Right? So now this hyphae, which is over here, okay. Now what happens here is this particular organism is a decaying thing and all, or this is a dead animal or whatever it may be. Now what this fungi will do is it will secrete all the digestive enzymes. Now, there are so many digestive enzymes in our body, because when you eat food, our digestive system will release so many enzymes which will break the food molecules and make them into simple molecules. The complex food what you eat, it should be broken down, it should be simplified so that it can mix in the blood. That is how the enzymes will act on the food and convert them into liquid form so that it can go into the blood. So that's the simple logic here, and the same simple logic is also applied here. The digestive enzymes which are here, they are sent outside. Okay, so all these, they come out and they will digest the food outside the body. The food is not digested in the body. When you take our body, it is intracellular digestion. That is, the food is getting digested inside the body, right, in the stomach. So ours is intracellular digestion. But whereas here, the complete digestion is taking place outside. So this is called as the extracellular digestion. So you can say it is the extracellular digestion. So extracellular digestion in the sense, right, the food is digested outside the body, right? And then when it is completely digested, then the body will absorb, the fungi will absorb that food material. That's why this mode of nutrition is called as the saprophytic nutrition. Mode of nutrition is called as the saprophytic nutrition. Okay, children. So these organisms, basically fungi, these are basically they are parasitic in nature. At the same time, they are symbiotic in nature. Now, what is parasitic and what is symbiotic? Parasites are those organisms which depend upon the other organisms for their food and also harm them. For example, if there is a bacteria in your body, it is eating the food from your body, and then it is also harming your body, isn't it? So in the same way, fungi also lives in the body. You get skin diseases, right? Now some plants will get the diseases, the groundnut will get the ticca disease, which is caused by the fungi. So they will eat those, right? They will depend upon the nutrients from the living organisms, and also they will harm them. That's why they are called as the parasites. They live, at the same time they survive by eating the nutrients and also harm the host in which they are living. So that is the reason why they are called as the parasitic, right? They are called as the parasites. So they are parasitic in nature. They are called as parasites, right? And then some of them live a symbiotic life. Now what is symbiotic life? Symbiotic in the sense here, there is an organism, okay? It requires nutrients. So it depends upon the other organism but doesn't harm them. in return it helps it. In return it helps it. So that's why it is called as the symbiosis. For example, I'll give you one example. There are crocodiles. There are crocodiles. What they do is they open their mouth and they travel in the water. Okay. So what happens is, now there are leeches in the water, right? They suck the blood. So they get attached to the gums of the crocodiles, right? And now the crocodiles are in a great pain because of the leeches, right? So what they do is they come out of the water and they keep their mouth open. So the cranes which are over there, they come, and what they do is they will pick out this leeches and eat them. Now who is getting benefited here? Cranes are getting benefited because they are getting the food. Second one is, who is also getting benefited? Crocodile is getting benefited. Why? Because it is getting relief from the pain. Okay, so that is how this is like mutual understanding. In the way both are able to help each other, and that's why this process is called as the symbiosis, right? Symbiotic kind of animal. So symbiosis is an absolute opposite of the parasitic. Okay, so symbiosis is absolutely opposite of parasitic nature. So let me tell you one more example. There are bacteria in our intestines. Okay, they depend upon the nutrients which come into the intestines. They survive by eating the intestines, food which comes into the intestines. And you know what happens? They also secrete the chemical vitamin which is called as the cyanocobalamin. Okay, that is not at all present in any of the food materials whichever you eat. So they should be only produced by the bacteria which are present in the intestines. So both are getting help from each other. We are giving the nutrients, they are giving us the vitamin. So this is also called as the symbiosis, isn't it? So some of the fungi here are symbiotic and some of them are parasitic in nature. Okay, so now let me tell you this small thing and all. We'll close it off. Now if you take a fungi, so if you take a normal plant cell and all, like their cell wall is made up of a sugar called as the cellulose, isn't it? They're made up of the sugar called as cellulose. But whereas here, this cell wall is made up of the chitin. It's made up of the chitin. So this chitin is also kind of sugar, but it's not exactly what is cellulose. So it's a different kind of sugar by which the cell wall is made up of, especially in the fungi, right? And coming to the last point, these fungi can reproduce sexually and also asexually. They can reproduce sexually as well as asexually. So when you come to the asexual reproduction and all, no, they can reproduce with the help of the process called as budding. They can reproduce with the help of the fragmentation. They can also reproduce by the help of the spores. So now I told you, okay, this is a hyphae, this is a sporangia, okay, and when the spores fill in the sporangia, it will burst and all the spores will fall on the, maybe it's a bread or maybe any other decaying substance, and now every spore will develop into a new fungi. Okay, that is how you can see mushrooms, like which are like this. Okay, nowadays we also use it as the food item, right? So there are molds, there are mushrooms. Okay, and one more example I would like to tell is lichens. Okay, if you go to the mountain areas, there are some algae. There are some algae, and these algae, like they are actually picked up by the people, okay, for food. Now what happens is this fungi will grow on this algae. The fungi will grow on this algae. Now this fungi will get the nutrients from the algae, and algae is giving the nutrients, right? And the fungi is giving the protection because nobody will touch that. Okay, but whereas now that is the material which is nowadays used in the making of biryani. We call it as dagarful, right? It's called as the lichen. It is called as the lichen. So these lichens are basically used in making the dish called as biryani, right? So this is how these are the different characters of the fungi. Okay, especially what you have to remember is the mode of reproduction, the budding, fragmentation, and the spores. Okay, they are parasitic in nature and also symbiotic in nature. They are non-motile. Okay, only yeast are the unicellular. They don't have the pigments, and that's why they cannot prepare their food material, right? And they are eukaryotic in nature. They have their mode of nutrition is saprophytic nutrition. So all these are the different characters which are not in the monera, which doesn't suit with the Protista nor with the plantain or with the animalia. That's why all these organisms are kept under one particular kingdom, and that is fungi. So we come to the end of the fungi, and tomorrow we'll meet with plantain, and also we'll start the animalia. Hope you all understood this one. Okay, see you all. Take care. Have a great day.